for all of us. Alrighty, so thank you everyone for being here this afternoon and for this workshop on Connect Better, Curiosity Builds Great Teams and Fuels Tough Conversations. My name is Cameron Law and I serve as the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm joined by some people here in the Carlson Center where they're on the ViewSonic, and one of those being our team member, Arlene Miranda, who heads up our marketing and operations. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. We have this steadfast mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region and have this really grandiose vision to make the greater Sacramento region this premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. And how we've gone about building that is we work with people like yourselves, entrepreneurs who want to create change and build the future. And so we do that through what we call a continuum of support that we call the entrepreneurial journey. And we have three core areas of programming: our Discover, Build, and Launch sets of programs. And so today's workshop is part of our Discover program. So giving you some of those tools and frameworks to be able to build better teams and get your startup off the ground. And so jumping in, because obviously you don't want to hear more about me, you want to hear from our two guest speakers who are the co-authors of Bridge the Gap. And our guest speakers are Jennifer Edwards and Katie McCleary. So Jennifer Edwards is a business and leadership advisor working with Fortune 500 companies and boards, equipping them to perform and collaborate optimally when pressure and stress hits. Her clients include top leaders at global companies, including Microsoft and WeWork. She is a partner at Winning Streak Ventures, an early stage venture capital fund which invests in disruptive technologies and companies. And I will note that Winning Streak Ventures is in Sacramento, which is great to see that support for our ecosystem here. Our next guest speaker and the other co-author of Bridge the Gap is Katie McCleary, who is an entrepreneur and storyteller who trains leaders, creatives, and humanitarians to launch big ideas by leveraging their social and cultural capital. She's the founder of 916 Inc., a nonprofit that has transformed over 4,000 vulnerable youth into confident authors. She's the host of The Drive, a podcast on NPR's Cap Radio with the American Leadership Forum, Mountain Valley in Sacramento. So before I turn it over to Jennifer and Katie, I do want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. We would love for you to have your videos on. Always makes for a lot more engagement. And I know they're going to have a very engaging workshop for you. So turn those videos on if you do have them off. Feel free to use the raised hand features as you're going. And if you also have questions, you can use that chat feature where you hopefully introduced yourself and shared where you're from. At the end, I'm going to be doing a raffle for those that are here. So I'm going to be putting your name in a spinning wheel, and then we'll ultimately see who's walking away with a brand new hardback of Bridge the Gap. So stay tuned and stay here for the whole workshop, and we will ultimately see who walks away with a free copy of Bridge the Gap. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jennifer and Katie, and thank you all for being here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cameron and the Carlson Center in Sac State for having us. We could not be more thrilled to be here. And honestly, it's so great to see so many friendly faces. And we have faces from all around the world too. So thanks for joining us. So today we have a lot of information for you, and it's really all around curiosity and how can we operationalize curiosity in order to show up better at work with our colleagues, our teams, and also how can it sort of defuse maybe some of those tough conversations that you're having?
Absolutely. We really want to bring not only to the Sacramento region, but to our country and to all business entrepreneurs around the world, the ability to understand how to bridge gaps with people they struggle to like, understand, and respect in the workplace, and for people who struggle to like, understand, and respect you. So we hope you'll leave today with really tangible tools. We're not going to have a presentation today. We're going to have a conversation, which means you're going to need to come off mute. So use that mute finger, be ready to unmute, mute. We really mean this. We're going to be engaging with you. And at the end, we're going to have some conversations. We love to riff. We do. We love to riff with people. So we love pushback. We love really engaged conversations. Nothing's off limit because when you get curious, you can have any conversation in the world.
Absolutely. We've brought probably too much content today. So we are going to pop on to our PowerPoint. We don't show it as a big, huge slide. We actually keep it in another format. And we're going to cruise through it, but we're going to pop it on and off again in engagement. So let's get started. Here we are. Today, you have come to learn about what we call the curiosity cure. And this conversation that we're going to have today really is going to cover 6 things. We're going to explore human judgment and the biology of behavior. We're going to talk about what's called the emotional needs quandary. We're going to show up about good ears. We're going to give you a tool to better accelerate trust and respect. We're going to shift a paradigm for you about maybe how you're having conversations, one way over two way. And we're going to absolutely talk about the power of pause and silence. But none of this would be applicable if you don't make it relevant to your own life. So let's take 2 minutes, if even that, to really jot down and write or hold in your head. And you are not going to share this. We are not going to ask you to share this. We want you to write down a relationship with someone that you connect with easily. Man, if you could replicate this relationship, you would time and time again. Second, I want you to write down a relationship with someone that you struggle to connect with. You work with them, collaboration, but it's hard. 3, a relationship with someone who is in left field for you and you just can't connect. It just keeps being a struggle. It's tough. Okay. So let's
1 minute.
take some time to think about those. And we're going to revisit those at the end of our conversation before we sort of break into some deeper Q&A.
So I want you to think about these people as we're going through the deck and having this conversation today to see if it can create some meaning and shift for you. Because we make one base premise in our book, and it's based on research and science, and it's this: humans are judgment-making machines. What that means is everywhere we go in the world, we make meaning of what we see. And more often than not, that's based on a lens of what we know about, what we're comfortable with, how we see our world. But in any case, the way we make meaning of the world is what we hear, what we see, we judge. And we need to admit to ourselves that not only in our family, not only in our community, but especially in our work, there are people we really struggle to understand, like, and respect in our lives. And there are many people who struggle to understand, like, and respect you.
Okay. So when you're in relationships with this tussle or even a fraught conversation, does it feel like this?
Hold on.
Yeah. You guys play with these cylinder like finger traps when you were growing up, right? It's a tussle. It's back and forth and I'm stuck and I can't move out because if I feel uncomfortable or they feel uncomfortable, they move away and it creates tightness and friction. What is the key to getting out of a finger trap? Anybody have the answer real quick? Pop on.
Moving closer.
Thank you. Is that Laylee? Thank you so much. One has to move in to release both. And that's the key, right? We have two-way relationships, but if you lean in closer, you actually create space on the other side for them also to get out.
And the only way that happens is through curiosity. It is the antidote that ends this judgment and this struggle. And not the kind of curiosity that is feigned or fake or fraudulent. It's really a wondering of, Katie, what don't I know about you? What's your lived experience? What's the reality you have? And am I willing to go close enough, be curious enough to lead toward Katie to get myself out?
Absolutely. So the other thing that we have to acknowledge is that everyone is doing the best they can with the skills they can access. This is so important. The skills that they can access in that given moment. We're going to talk next about the biology of that, but just show up with grace, right? That's really what it takes to show up curious. So this is your brain at work. When you are calm, right? You are able to have reasoning and logic. You are able to communicate. You are able to collaborate and have creativity. But how many times a day are we hijacked by pressure, stress, anxiety, deadlines? I mean, Jennifer, do you ever like get a number on your phone and the name pops up? What happens to your body?
My body, it starts sweating. It can become panicky. It can become nervous. And the other one that gets me is I was driving here, my body got pressured because I almost hit a car right at the traffic light. And whether it's a real, like I honestly thought the airbag was gonna go off this morning, whether it's real like that or whether it's perceived. What's interesting that most of us don't know is that our body responds with the same set of chemical cocktails. Yeah, chemicals that flood your executive function. And if everybody would just remember, touch your forehead here, to remember, this is where logic, this is where curiosity, this is where collaboration sit. And when you're hijacked, whether it's from an actual or a perceived pressure, you lose your mind.
You really do. And cortisol, there's a bunch of research to show this. When that starts getting in your body and head, cortisol floods your prefrontal cortex and you lose up to 26 hours of your executive function. That is your ability to be curious, communicative, and collaborative, and to stay calm. So why this is important is that you want to show up as optimally as you can and understand, how does my body feel? How can I gather myself and disrupt myself in order to show up, especially with someone that we struggle with, to communicate better?
Absolutely. And we really want to think a lot about the fact is, what does it actually mean to bridge a gap? And here's what it means. People aren't problems. When we stop seeing all the interactions we're in and the people we're in as a set of problems, and instead see them as a set of concerns, that all they're giving us is some explanation, some unconscious information, we will have an ability to bridge the gap with them. Because when we know them, we can bridge the gap.
It's a choice.
It is.
It's a choice. It's about self-awareness and taking personal responsibility for how you show up in relationships, conversations, and interactions. It is the choice to move closer, to release the struggle, the tough conversation from the finger trap. So that's the first thing that professionals do when they choose to bridge the gap. The second thing they do is they use curiosity as a reliable tool and intentional filter for how they listen, how they speak, and engage in relationship building. And the third thing they do is that you communicate openly, honestly, so that all parties can speak their minds and find a way forward. We are bridge builders. It doesn't mean that it's going to be some la land. You're going to have tough conversations. So again, I want to remind you, humans are judgment-making machines. Right?
And the part that, I want to re-anchor this, the part that most of us have never really thought about is how our biology is actually navigating our behavior. Let me say that again, how our biology is navigating our behavior. We've been taught for a number of years that it's about emotions and personalities, and all of that is true. And biologically, we are wired for a survival behavior that oftentimes doesn't give us optimal performance. Our machinery is wired for that. It is also wired for us to take a step and be in personal choice, to interrupt our biological predisposition to worry, to judge, to criticize, to become optimal. And so this book really is all about the tools to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to read, and I would love it if one of you guys would read. We have 5 statements here, and then we're going to pause this and really talk about what's the judgment that we hear in some of these pretty common statements that you may hear in the workplace or out in the world. And so, because I know her and I'm just going to pick on her right now, is Laylee. Will you please read that first bullet point?
Sure, I'd be happy to read.
Thanks. Sorry, you're eating, but You're divine. Thank you so much.
I have no problem with Bob. It's just that he messes up projects more than he helps. I often have to clean up his work on top of my own. He needs to learn to multitask better and make a proper spreadsheet. Then I would have no issue working with him. And it says, note, this speaker struggles to value Bob's contributions at work.
Thank you. I know that Josie is on the call. Josie, are you able to come on and read bullet point number 2?
Sure. Sheila is a wonderful woman. She just needs 10 more years of management experience before becoming our leader. Note, this speaker struggles to respect Sheila and see what she does bring as a leader.
Thank you so much. And the third one, Veronica, would you please read that for me?
Yeah, sure. Millennials want everything right now. They're an entitled generation that hasn't paid their dues like we have. Sarah will need to wait before we ever consider her for that promotion. Note, this speaker struggles to understand an entire generation and is punishing Sarah for her age and ambition.
Thank you. Jeannie, are you able to read the next one?
Hi, yes. Okay, Betty. Show me again how to create a coordinated influencer campaign across 5 social media platforms using a data-driven algorithm that allows us to respond in real time to people's feeds. Oh, that's right. Boomers don't know how. Note, this speaker struggles to like an entire generation and speaks with sarcasm that damages relationships. Thank you for choosing me for this one.
You're welcome. Playing along. So I'm going to stop share right now and let's pop on and talk about how has judgment leaked in to our language? Are we even aware of it? What are some of your experiences about that? Yeah, Lucid.
I know personally when I had gotten my a job in an office for the first time, they expected me, since I guess I was younger, they expected me to already know how to use Microsoft and stuff. And since I was like in school at the time, but personally, I've never really used Microsoft. So when I asked them, they said, well, aren't you a college student? And I was all like, okay. Yeah, so that was like one of my experiences of being like judged. So
Good one.
Yeah, good one. And also like they made an assumption, right? How many times do we come to the table making assumptions almost due to the busyness of our day, right? We're rushing through our day and that happens.
In fact, often I think judgments are unconscious. They jump out of our mouths before we're even aware that we're thinking them.
Mhm.
So is there another person who has a thought about judgment in this way?
Let's see if we have a message in the chat right here. Oh, we have one from Chico. So it's leaked in, and right, we are in polarizing times, right? We've been through a pandemic, political polarization. We've been through social upheaval and unrest in the fight for social justice. We have been through the Great Resignation and the reshuffle. We have been through so much. People are on pins and needles, and they're making judgments and assumptions all the time.
And we have a quandary to present to you, and it's something that many people have yet thought about. So we're going to challenge your thinking that maybe you haven't considered this. It's research-based, and it's this. When we're in relationship with people and looking to grab influence, credibility, to have an ability to really lead effectively, there's one thing that we rarely go to, but it's the thing that matters most to human beings, and it's this. Every human is unconsciously looking to have their human emotional need met. That's why they play the game of business. In fact, all business is at some level a game. It's a game for identity. It's a game to show you how I'm valuable, how I can contribute, and how I can belong to something bigger than myself. That's really what it is. And if we as leaders want to be the most effective leader we can, we actually have to have a conversation that is very conscious of the brain in front of us. Remember, we're positioning against the idea that feelings drive people all the time. They do. And we believe, and research demonstrates, that the biological need we all have is driving our prefrontal cortex. And that one of the ways we can engage more effectively is to be conscious of, hey, what's the brain in front of me need? Does it need to know that it belongs? How can I demonstrate that? Does it need to know that it makes sense? And then does the person in front of me need to know that they matter and contribute? And it's a really important conversation, because in those boxes, or those 5 or 4 stories, quips we just read, what was being expressed was that an emotional need is critical. In history, we've typically said to ourselves, it's really the physical needs that are important. And don't get me wrong, they are. But most of us here on this call are in a first world environment where most of our physical needs are met. Although we're aching inside as we watch Ukraine, right? Having very few of their physical needs met. Wow, that even made me emotional just there. So number 1, we need to remember that emotional needs drive behavior. Number 2, unsatisfied emotional needs actually trigger a survival response, a fight, flight, or flee behavior in leaders. Don't think that's not happening. It happens all the time. When somebody feels a sense of shame, they will come out in a fight, flight, or flee scenario, much more than you think they will. When you watch erratic behavior in your organization, people raging and you just can't figure out why, see if one of these needs is not being met. And finally, here's a really important piece. Don't go in hot to a conversation. Go in thinking to yourself, what does this individual really need? What do I predict is possibly an emotional need they need to be satisfied? Because you show up that way, you show up optimally, and you have a better chance to engage with them.
So one of the things that we say all the time is how you show up matters.
Yeah.
Your energy transfers. And we are going to talk about what happens when you meet with someone who is throwing a tantrum and they're yelling and screaming, or they're being very, they're thrashing your values, right? How do we show up in that moment? But most situations are gaps. They're not those all out wars, which we call canyons. So when there's a gap between you and another, how you show up matters, because your energy translates and can move the conversation forward. And so we need people to choose to be an explorer, choose to care, and be ready to be in a conversation and adventure, suspending their own emotional needs to focus on the emotional needs of the other person and empty their cup and hear what they have to say. Open our ears as well.
Let's ask you this question, and this is a question many people haven't ever been asked. Do you listen to your listening? Are you aware of the fact that you have a pair of headphones on right now that filter the way information comes into you? We all do. You're doing it right now. I do it when my teenager walks in the room. I do it when a certain client walks in the room. I start putting on a pair of headphones that inform me of something that may or may not be true. And in fact, effective listening is rarely, look at this data, about the words that people use. Effective listening is actually about understanding and comprehending the individual in front of you, and the information they're giving you is oftentimes led with body language, inflection, and tone. Words only make up 7%, and we know this. You know, listening, oftentimes, how many of you have walked into a restaurant or walked into a boardroom or walked into a pitch, and there was a lot of information that you were listening for that had nothing to do with language? You could smell, you could feel the tension. You could smell, you could feel the anticipation and ambition. Listening is much more than words. Some of us are great listeners, but there are a lot of times, Katie, where listening gets sloppy.
Yep. So what makes us sloppy listeners? Number 1, waiting for our turn to speak. We're not even listening. We're queuing up what we're going to say. Focusing on our own concerns, bringing an agenda, an addiction to solving problems. As I listen, I want to hear the energy that's behind the words that they're using so that I can understand what's at stake for them, not just jump to fixing. Discomfort with silence. Everybody I have met has this problem. We actually teach people to get used to waiting 8 full seconds. Be comfortable with silence. It's really powerful. We get distracted by internal and external things, our phone, our smartwatches, our own needs, our to-do list. And we're sloppy listeners because we're not conscious to it. We're not actually following a process with intention that says, I'm here to hear something new.
Yeah.
I'm here to hear the energy and what's at stake for them so that I can speak back and find a way forward. So if we go back to those invisible headphones and really think about these next 3 slides, because we may ask you in the chat to say, what is some of the listening that you come across in your interactions with people, especially in this era? The first is that people wear a set of headphones that are tuned with suspicious defensive listening. You say something, they say back, why do you think that? And they think they're being curious.
Oh,
You have now shoved your biology into a place of defense. You've triggered Amy, your amygdala. Well, where'd you come up with that idea? Who told you that? Oh yeah, keep trying to convince me is the tone that they convey.
the other listening that we find that people really show up with is the non-confrontal listening, and we call it passive pleaser. And it's when somebody doesn't have the courage, the strength, the willingness, or even the interest to engage, and they just go, yep, okay, but they're really not present or in there. They're actually like just letting the information go right by them without any really engagement.
I've worked with so many bosses with passive pleaser listening. I should write a book called How to Survive Bad Bosses.
That's a good one.
Then you have bias listening. I think this comes across a lot for a lot of different populations. You say something and somebody says, well, I know I worked in this field. I'm an expert.
Oh yeah.
No, look, I grew up in the industry. You're not really telling me anything I already know. Yeah, there's nothing new. Well, this is my favorite. Well, what I don't think you understand is this, or what you're forgetting is. So let's pop off, or just in the chat, we're going to stop the share for just a second. In the chat is, what is some of the listening filters that you come across in your conversations in community? How are people listening? We'll write them in the chat.
Yes, Laylee, so many people are listening for an agenda. It's so darn true. Yeah, and biased listening in work conversations all the time. Yeah. While you're writing them, one thing to think about is we all have a default one we lean toward.
Yep.
We all have a default one we lean toward, and they can be different. You have definitely a set of relationships where you lean one way, where in a different set of relationships, you lean another way. Absolutely.
We have some great answers piling up in here. Waiting to hear that you agree with what they said.
Yep.
I need to defend everything, or no, not I need, a need to defend everything they said. I love these people who come with like monologues and like arsenals of knowledge. Like, did you listen to this podcast?
The
Did you
vomit.
do that? It's like, hold on. Sonia, love seeing you, sometimes can be intimidated when I ask a lot of questions, right? And we want to show up with curious energy, but peppering people also puts them in a defensive
We
position.
call it the woodpecker.
Yep. Showing up defensive in our listening. Jeannie says, actually not listening, distracted. I think that is so incredibly common. People are not present because they don't slow down anymore. We live in a multitasking world. So it takes strength to say, I'm here to be present with you. I have silenced things internally, externally, to be with you. That connection, you can overcome any tough conversation if you stay in it.
There's something that we need to share with you that may not be a shock, but most people don't like to hear. And that is, most people don't like to listen. They like to talk. Very few people really care about what you have to say. I mean, it's hard to say that, but most people want to tell you what they think they know. They don't really want to listen and be curious. So we agree that we are asking for a tall order and that it's an important conversation. But the real way you show up as a great listener is to realize that there is, like the clean eating craze going across America. We want to call you into a clean, curious listening craze. It means this: I'm suspending my judgment, I'm suspending my story, my biases, my passive pleaser. I'm actually interrupting it each time I go there. And I'm in a state of curiosity to think about this. What don't I know? I don't yet know. And there's an important conversation that we really need to bring you to. And this is right. This is important, is that actually nobody's going to change their mind or hear something new if you don't listen to the other person fully. The other person is always right about their feelings, likes, dislikes, the day they just experienced, the narrative and the fears. If I truly want to have an experience, I need to listen to their place of right before I have any actual chance of communication.
Mhm. So this is where we want to give you kind of just an easy sort of shift and tool. We know how important in business, entrepreneurship, how important trust and respect is, because honestly, you can fuel tough conversations and get through anything if I know at the end of the day, I can speak my truth, come to Jennifer, and we have enough trust and respect that keeps the glue of our relationship going. So one of the things about Jennifer and I
I was going to say, let's tell them that.
is I'm a liberal.
Conservative,
I listen to rock and rap.
country,
I'm a Buddhist.
Christian.
I homeschooled my kids.
I love public school.
We also have different economic status. We have completely different belief systems. But when I show up in curiosity and I can trust Jennifer and she can trust me, we can actually turn any breakdown into a breakthrough. And we focus also on shared goals, right? And finding them, but also saying, like, sometimes, hey, what you just said doesn't land for me. And here's why it doesn't land for me.
For sure.
But you can't do that if, one, you don't know each other, you're not meeting each other's emotional needs, and you don't have trust and respect. So trust and respect is like an egg. It's an egg in a nest. And you have a lot of eggs in a lot of different nests with a lot of different important people in your work and life. You need to be tending to that egg of trust and respect because it diminishes quickly over time. There's cracks, there's fissures. And we want to get you to the place where that egg hatches and it becomes a bird and a life of its own, right? You can manage anything.
And here's an interesting piece. Most of us have been taught this thing called the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated, as the way to connect and build trust with another. And here's the bad news: it doesn't really work that well because not everybody wants to be treated like you do. Its intention is spot on, but it needs to be upgraded to a concept called the platinum rule. And the platinum rule calls us out to have a conversation, an engagement, a connection with somebody in the way they prefer to be treated. And there's two core ways that research demonstrates that people want to be initially, and hear me say that, initially connected with. And Katie, we call them sincerity and competency as a core way to start to develop trust and then to maintain trust as a way of connection.
Yep. This happens all the time in Sacramento, right? I mean, I'm just going to speak from my own experience. I'm a fundraiser, right? So I have a lot of people who give money out of their heart, and it's all about being sincere in the warm fuzzies. They want to hear the stories, the impact of real individuals and kids.
Yeah.
Then I have a lot of funders who care about data, competency. How are we moving the needle? What are the measurables? When I gave you my money, what happened? They don't need to be led with sincerity. I need to show up with competency. And the great thing is, go for it. Go for it.
No, go.
Okay.
Keep your story going.
So it's almost like two legs. People, and there's a ton of research. It comes from Dr. Amy Cuddy out of Harvard in a book called Presence, which is where basically people make snap judgments about you in 0.02 seconds. They can identify, are you a sincere person or a competent person? And how do I want to build trust with this person in front of me? So if you lead with sincerity, competency is your second leg and it can come up next. So it's not an either or. Everybody has sincerity and competency inside of them. You just might lead differently. So there's a strategic approach.
And it's really important that we realize that how we show up matters. And we don't go into hot. We don't go hot. I love saying that. I don't want to fly in hot to a conversation. I want to have a predictable way to show up that maximizes and optimizes my ability to communicate. So before I go into any meeting, I think about Cameron. Hey, Cameron, how am I going to show up with you? I'm going to show up real warm and fuzzy, or am I going to show up more business packed, business focused, back to the point? We want to debunk this saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Hogwash. That will destroy trust. It means that I need to actually understand who's in front of me and what their brain needs. And oftentimes I may not know when I go in cold to a prospect, but there are a lot of ways in the wild, that's our silly little way that we say when, we don't have the time to think about it, that I can take a look. I can take a look at how their office is or how they're playing it. And I can say, well, busy inclusive means they want to be led with first sincerity because people matter to them.
I'm a totally sincere person. My backdrop is filled with flowers and books and color and story.
And I'm a competency person, and mine is filled with almost nothing. I mean, the more sterile, the better for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we pay attention to these things, expressive and fun, much more sincerity lead, stylish and clean. And what that means is this: we create cheat sheet. How am I going to show up to build initial trust and to maintain trust? For example, in a competency person, the worst email they can get is this: hey, you're killing me. I'm so sorry. I forgot to put it in the calendar. Can we reschedule? Drinks on me. Vegas, baby. I mean, if you're a sincerity person, you may like getting an email like that. But if you're a competency person, you have just completely put yourself as untrustworthy, unprofessional. By opposite, if I'm sending somebody an email and they're a sincerity person, this feels so cold, sterile, impersonal, lack of warmth, that it makes the person say, do they get me? Do they understand me? So, Katie, when we think about this is the key point. People don't rush by this. How you show up matters, and the initial impression matters. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a tool to keep going. It's a tool that you use throughout the engagement of any relationship, that you maintain the platinum rule. They may never reciprocate, by the way. But if you lead as the leader in the relationship, you will always move to their preference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we talk a lot about what curiosity is and profiles of curiosity. And most importantly, this idea of curiosity fraud. People show up fraudulent all the time with their curiosity. They're just driving their own agenda. Curiosity is more of an energy. It is. It's expressing genuine interest. It's be interested, not interesting. Find out what you don't know that you don't know. I'm gonna go back to this. Sorry. Find out what they want to talk about. Ask questions that you don't know the answers to. Listen to hear something new. Listen for what's important to them and stay out of problem-solving mode. Give it some time and space.
The problem is most people don't know how to do it. And they have what we call a two-way conversation. And a two-way conversation looks a little bit like this. Nothing wrong with it, but it looks a little bit like this. And we've been trained for it. Here we go. Katie, how was your weekend?
It was good. I went to the beach.
I love the beach. What'd you do there?
I had the sand, but I'm not really a beach person.
Oh, well, then why'd you go to the beach? I mean, I love the beach. The beach is everything to me. It's like my home. It's my nirvana.
I'm just more of a woods person.
I don't ever understand that. Woods. I mean, what's that about?
We've been taught that a good conversation is leapfrog. No more leapfrog.
A good conversation is actually a one-way conversation. It's a conversation that looks a little bit more like this. Katie, what did you do this weekend?
Well, I really wanted to go to Tahoe, but we went to the beach instead.
Oh, tell me about the beach.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I get it. it's nice and peaceful, but it's always windy, it's always cold, the sand is dirty, and sometimes it smells.
A one-way conversation says, I'm willing to be in this conversation, not to compete, not to show how much I know, and not to do something we've been taught. Not to say, the way I build identity and brand with you is to contribute into your story. The actual way I built brand, influence, and contribute into your story is by being curious long enough to let you tell me the whole story. And it's by asking a set of questions that truly are tested to make the brain and the prefrontal cortex open up.
Yep. So our secret question, which it's been written about a lot, this is not a secret, but the secret good question is, tell me about. And it doesn't have to be about, tell me about your emotions, tell me about what's
doesn't have
going
to be
on with
gooey.
you. It doesn't have to be gooey. Tell me back, show me.
So tell me a little bit about what your pipeline looks like right now, Katie, so I can understand how to help you. Katie, tell me a little bit about what your finances are so we can see what the gap is. Tell me about questions actually allow the person in front of you to feel a sense of openness and lack of judgment. Now, by contrast, let's show you a set of questions, the question that actually creates division and polarization and kind of that screw you energy, but we use it all the time. Katie, why do your finances look like that? Katie, why is your pipeline so lean?
I don't like any of those questions. I mean, literally, we've been taught to ask why. Stop asking why. Stop
Throw
asking
it away.
measurement questions. If you listen to podcasters, interviewers, great people lead with, tell me about, I'm curious, will you share with me? What about? What else can I learn? They leave open-ended questions because what happens is now it's top of mind for them. And if you keep following their energy, like where they get sad, where they get depressed, where they get excited, like lead into that. Tell me more about that and be with them for a period of time. I'm not going to give it prescriptive, right? Because we don't know how many times we have in a
How many
day.
times we need to ask the question, right?
Right. But like be with them so that you really do hear and learn something more at a deeper level.
And most importantly, here it is. After I've asked a series of questions and I've let Katie do some exploring, I don't need to jump in and rescue the conversation.
Nope.
In fact, one of the most important things is to start getting yourself comfortable with what we call the great pause, some silence. What that silence actually is an indicator of is empathy. And what empathy really means is being with someone, not fixing, not projecting, not equipping, not giving solutions yet.
We've really messed up how we teach empathy
We really
in the
have.
nation. People are all over the place about it. We actually made a conscious choice in the book to not teach language about empathy. We actually have like 3 things. It's basically like 8 seconds of silence. Thank you for sharing. That is it. Because if you offer back, what I hear in that is
Interpretation.
interpretation and judgment and assumption often because people just suck at it. There's just no other way to say it. Silence. Thank you for sharing. So we have talked fast and hard. It's 12:45 and we want to have a conversation and get some questions in. So this is what we covered. We're going to have you think back to these relationships. What are some shifts that you can make to get out of the finger trap and to even replicate maybe some of that first relationship with? There's probably some secret sauce ingredients in there. So we'll take off the slide now and we would love to have some questions. All right. While you're thinking of questions, in the chat, we have Sonia says, this is huge. Did you say this was in the book Presence? Yes, and I'll put it in the chat. It's called Presence by Dr. Amy Cuddy. She's done a lot of work about the impression that we make in a split second. And her research shows 50% of the population in America wants to build a relationship with someone who's competent. 50% of the nation wants to build a relationship with someone who's sincere.
You should really get clear before you start making your mouth move and your energy move, what you think you have in the room, in the brain in front of you to really show up more. And we're going to give you a little, can we give them a little secret sauce? Here's a great question. If you don't know the very first question, like how they show up, you can't see any cues in the wild. Ask this question or a version of it. Hey, Katie, glad to be sitting down with you today. Tell me what we can achieve today. Tell me what you'd like to get out of our meeting. That question will right then and there open up whether they're going to tell you a story and want some sincerity and warmth to start, or if they're going to say, I want to know bullet, bullet, bullet. And in that moment, you get to choose the platinum rule. You get to shift your beingness, your languaging pattern, and show up for the appropriate preference they have. And I love the question, what happens if people shows up differently one day to the next? Guess what? They don't as much as you'd think. People and humans are predictable. They're very consistent in the way they show up. Now, I definitely think that in certain relationships, we show up differently. But you, if you're a science of human beings, and instead of being in the conversation you're in, sometimes being above the conversation you're in while you're in the conversation, you will see patterns that reveal consistency.
All right, I know somebody's going to have the $1 million question at some point.
And we'd love to see your
To open
faces
it.
too, if we could.
Yeah. What do I do when? That's usually a great conversation opener.
What do I do when is a great.
Yeah, Veronica.
It's kind of just more of a comment on the curious conversation, like the statements and the starters. I feel like we've been taught so long, especially from my background in public relations, the 5 W's of like, how do you get information out? And so seeing that, I was just like, oh my God. Because I mean, they're great conversation starters, really pulling out, like, tell me more about this. And I'm curious about it, and some of the other ones. I just thought that was mind blowing right now.
Thank you. We really have been taught the 5 W's, and 4 of those W's are data-driven and measurement-based.
Think about it. It's pretty crazy. And they're not bad questions, but they're not going to get curious thinking. They also get something else that's super important. They give performative answers. A performative answer is, I better look good in front of you and give you the answer that will reflect my or build my brand and identity, as opposed to let me consider what I can't consider. Because so many of us are so afraid to give the wrong answer that we struggle. So these questions allow for processing.
Yeah, it's a really processing questions, because then you do move in. And this is like chapter 10 or 11 in our book. We say, here's all the moves that you make after you've had a curious conversation. Then you can ask clarifying questions. You could say, let's wayfind some options together if it's appropriate for a problem solving dynamic or a collaboration to happen, right? Like, how are we going to move forward? And so there's different sort of back and forth moves that we do there. And then those 5 W's can come in.
Samara, I love your question about the patterns which are reflective of organizational dynamics, and there definitely are.
Yeah.
I just finished the Netflix book, The No Rules Culture. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read it. And we also, like for many of you, you realize that Intel and HP, wildly successful businesses here locally, have radically different cultures. And people show up within the culture that is expected. So yes, patterns and people will show up to survive within the cultures that are established. And most importantly, to remember, if you don't think that an organization has a culture, it does. Just watch how people are communicating. That will tell you if they're CYAing or if they feel like they can explore ideas and fail forward. I mean, it tells you a lot about what the safety parameters are of communication.
And also, I think I go back to that thing of like, people are doing the best that they can with the skills they can access in the moment they're given. So an example of an organizational dynamic setting itself up for failure. Jennifer and I were hired by a very large healthcare association right after, well, it was of spring after January 6th of 2021. And basically they had a split community, and they were trying to decide how to allot their political action dollars. And the question on the table was, do we give donations to those who have denied the events of January 6th? Well, Republicans retreated into Republicans, Democrats retreated into Democrats. They could not make a decision. So they brought us in and they were like, we have a really great idea. We're gonna have a town hall and we're gonna have a debate. And we're going to bring forth a voting expert who's a Democrat to give us an hour-long information session. And then we're going to give an hour-long to the Republican voting expert to come and bring their opinion too. And then we will have a good old debate, and Jennifer will go with the Republicans and Katie will go with the Democrats.
And as long, we're gonna vomit as much as we can, and eventually somebody will see it the other way. Do you think that works?
But we're so tied to these old structures, these old ways of being. We've lost our ability to be creative and to be with people and to hear people. We do all these weird moderations and debates, and it's like you just set up a dynamic for them to not agree even more. And I think in businesses, we have to think about competition, healthy competition, right? And often I see businesses perpetuating drama triangles. A drama triangle is blame, shame, and who didn't do it and who didn't meet the KPI.
The last thing I have to just
Okay.
share, because I'm an entrepreneurial, like, I have a chance to listen to a lot of pitches. Cameron knows I sit on a local venture capital fund. And I can't tell you how much I wish everyone would read this book before they pitch to us. Because the reality is if you are an entrepreneur on this and you're going to pitch or you're going to share your idea, know your audience, play the platinum rule, be curious before you vomit your idea. All of the stuff in this book speaks exactly to how you want to build connection with your funders, your partners. And because it's important, because if you're a startup and you're looking for partnership, we want to partner with you. But that means we've got to become communication ninjas together so that we can really grow your idea. So
Any other questions?
any other questions before we kind of move
back
to
to
the
the
open slide and then, yeah, Cameron?
Looks like we have one raised hand in the Carlson Center, so feel free to
Okay, great.
unmute there.
Awesome. Right up here.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Carlson Center.
We haven't heard
KZ,
from-
you're unmuted. Go ahead.
It's unmuted on our end.
They're playing with the mute there. So
There we go.
there we go.
You hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
you got it.
Perfect. Just like to say thank you for the conversation I'm a student at Sacramento State working on a startup. So really good information in the presentation from what I've caught. And it was just really interesting, especially just bouncing off that 5 why idea that you always hear in like customer discovery or customer development and that problem solution fit. I think it's really cool that perspective that you brought in of like, yes, you have to ask like those whys, but balancing out with trying to get a little bit deeper. So just like to applaud you on those points there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we sort of wrap up, I want you to think about again your relationships. Bring clarity and structure. Really get meta about how are you showing up? How are they showing up? What is this dynamic? Why does it work with this person, but it doesn't work with this person? Am I dealing with a gap, or is this a canyon between us? Is someone thrashing my values? Is someone negating my identity? And so just to really try to start bringing transparency and clarity as best you can, and to show up calm and collected. And some of this work is about being psychologically flexible. Another way is that it's about also psychological distance. Protect yourself, have a process, bring a structure.
Yeah, absolutely. We see one more question, Cameron. Do you want us to go to that in the ViewSonic?
The Carlson Center again.
If the hand was re-raised,
Oh, sorry, no.
Okay.
It was a mistake.
I got it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we believe in you. We believe the fact that we all have potential and we need to exercise that. This is a personal responsibility conversation that in every engagement, curiosity wins. It wins whether we're talking about how you show up, how you handle pressure, the patterns in your stories, how you care, your language you choose, and whether or not you choose to bridge gaps. And we're grateful, Cameron, for all you and Sac State and the Carlson Center are doing. And we do have an ask. As entrepreneurs ourselves, we would love one of 4 things for you to do to support us if you found value. Number 1 is share your feedback with us. Our email was on the list, and you can find us at Jennifer@howtobridgethegap and Katie@howtobridgethegap.com. Once you've read the book, we'd love reviews on Amazon
Or Goodreads or
Goodreads.
Powell's, wherever you buy.
4th is, who do you know? we wrote this book to spread the message. We are looking to create greater speaking opportunity. We're thrilled that both Forbes, Inc., Computer World have all acknowledged that our book is one of the most meaningful publications this year. Inc. calls us one of the top 3 publications and business books to read this year. So if you are in an association, have a big corporation, we would like to come and speak. And that is our unbridled plug.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron, for inviting us. We love supporting Sacramento.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And it's great to see 2 Sacramento entrepreneurs and spreading the good word. What a tremendous workshop, and many notes I know multiple people took, and even threw it in the chat that if they had to hop off, they took a whole notepad of notes. So we're good to go there. I am going to throw some links in the chat, but I do want to do the spinny wheel for one of our free copies of the book. So we're excited to give away a free copy. So if you were here, you are in the running for it. So I'm going to go and give it a spin here, and we get a fun little tune there. And our winner of the free book is going to be, all right, we got Antoinette from Advancement. There you go. There you go. So we can walk that on over. So excited to give you a free copy. But thank you again, Jennifer and Katie, for the wonderful workshop, for being the entrepreneurs that you are, and sharing all the amazing insights with us today. So I want to thank all of you for being in the space and coming to learn more about how to be curious and build great teams and have tough conversations. So we will be sharing this recording, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you again, Jennifer and Katie.
Thank
and,
you.
Best of luck on all the Bridge the Gap work that you're going forward with. So thank you all for being here, and have a great rast of the day.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.